Networks. What does it take in terms of eligibility to submit a proposal? What are the funding mechanisms? What are the evaluation criteria? And where you can find resources besides contacting your national contact points. Of course, there's a bunch of resources available on the internet. So what are Marie Skłodowska Curie actions? So that's basically a set of different funding schemes that really target at the core of the Marie Skłodowska Curie actions are the researchers training, the development of their skills and career at all stages of their career. And right now for Doctoral Networks, we're talking about doctoral training at the doctoral stage. Across all MSCA actions, what you need to know is that it's a bottom-up approach. So that means that there is no thematic priorities. There is no, there is no specific kind of field that we're looking for. You can come up with any research proposal in any area as long as the research is excellent. So there is no, it's not a top-down approach, it's a bottom-up approach. We'd like to foster international and intersectoral and interdisciplinarity mobility within the MSCA. You will see that the mobility, international mobility is a must. It's actually an eligibility criterion for the fellows. I will tell you more about that later. And the idea is also to have a structuring impact, not only on the researchers' future career, but also on the organization that provide the training to the doctoral candidates. And also strong collaboration with the non-academic sector, including industries and SMEs. So where are we within the landscape of the Horizon Europe? So we are in Pillar 1, Excellent Science. We are together with, you might have heard about, of course, you've heard about the European Research Council. There's also the research infrastructures, but one of those three is the Marie Skłodowska Curie actions. And Marie Skłodowska Curie actions in Horizon Europe is a total budget over the framework of 6.6 billion euros. And those are the 5 MSCA actions, and we are the doctoral network one. So doctoral programs in and outside academia, including joint and industrial doctorate. I will say that, tell a bit more on that later. And for 2023, we have a budget of 435 million euros. And the deadline to apply for this call, 2023 call, is the 28th of November, 2023. And the call will open on the 30th of May this year. So if I had to summarize what actually are doctoral networks, so doctoral networks is basically one consortium composed of universities, research centers, industries, SMEs, NGOs, and this consortium of organizations will propose an overall coherent research project. So there's an overall research project composed of a number of individual PhD research projects that are usually interlinked somehow within this overall coherent research project. And this research project will be for PhD students that they will recruit in the future. So when they submit a proposal, they don't know yet who the fellows will be, who the PhD students will be, and they will recruit them later in the lifetime of the project, right? So this is not a funding scheme for individual researchers, individual PhD students. This is a program for organizations that will set up doctoral training and doctoral programs. If there are in the audience people that are interested to do a PhD within a doctoral networks, then I would encourage you to go to the EURAccess portal. I can show it at the end of my presentation, where you will find all the job announcements for PhDs within the already existing doctoral networks. All right. So what are the expected outcomes of these doctoral networks programs? So as I said before, we expect benefit both from the doctoral candidates and for the organizations that will propose the project. So the idea is to train, so it's really focused on the training of the fellows, train creative, entrepreneurial, innovative, and resilient doctoral candidates to face current and future challenges, convert knowledge and ideas into products and services, and achieve sustainable economic and social benefit. The idea is to expose the researchers, so we will use interchangeably the word doctoral candidate, researcher, and fellow. So for us in our language, that means the same thing. So the idea is to expose the fellows to the academic and the non-academic sector and to offer them training, so through research, of course, but also other kinds of formal training. So the idea is that they are trained in research related and also in other competencies that are relevant for their long-term employability within the academia, but also outside academia, allowing the fellows to pursue other kinds of careers um, than the more standard, let's say, academic career. So in terms of training, I told you it was training through research and also other kinds of training, other kinds of more formal training. The idea is that it should focus on research and transferable skills. So transferable skills are all these skills that are, let's say, non-technical skills. It could be something like, over the top of my head, like, I don't know, IPR, ethics, public speaking, leadership, whatever. It can be done also through intersectoral secondments. So fellows could be recruited in one institution and be seconded to another institution from a different sector through the industry, for instance, or from the industry to a university, for instance. They should have a career development plan, be supervised. And the idea is also to enhance cooperation and knowledge transfers between the sectors and the discipline. All right. So the idea is really about human capital development. So it's to strengthen Europe's human capital base in research and innovation by training highly skilled doctoral candidates. The idea is also to improve the attractiveness of the researchers' careers in Europe through better working and employment conditions, enhance the talent and knowledge circulation through the three kinds of mobility: intersectoral, interdisciplinary, and international. Enhance Europe's sustainable competitiveness, establish sustainable collaboration between the academic and the non-academic organizations, and fosters a culture of open science, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I have to say that the open science requirement is not something that's only for MSCA, it's for the overall Horizon Europe framework program. So that's the overall picture of what is expected and what are doctoral networks for, what the European Union's getting out of it, right? Now, a bit more details about the doctoral networks. So those are basically multi-beneficiary actions. So as I said, these are consortia of organizations that are going to set up doctoral programs. And there are basically three flavors or modes of implementation. There are the doctoral networks that I will call standard doctoral networks. There are the industrial doctorates for which there are additional eligibility conditions, and the idea is to offer training in academia with a very strong component of the industry and the non-academic sector. And there are also the joint doctorates. And the joint doctorates, for that, the consortia will need to put in place joint or multiple or double doctoral degrees. That means that the fellows will need to be enrolled in a joint double or multiple degrees between different organizations within the consortium. And I will tell you a bit more about that later. So those are basically the three modes: doctoral networks industrial doctorates, or doctoral networks joint doctorates. What you need to know is that, as I said, this is a bottom-up approach. So you can come up with with a proposal in any field of science, but you will need to submit that in one of the 8 scientific panels of MSCAs. So there are 8 panels and you will need to choose one. So there is engineering, life science, economics, social sciences, physics, mathematics, environment, and I forgot one, chemistry. So you will need to choose one of these 8 scientific panels. And then within the scientific panels, you can choose either doctoral networks or an industrial doctorate or a joint doctorate. And what you need to know is that all these 3 modes compete within the same scientific panel. So if you submit an industrial doctorate proposal, it will compete with other industrial doctorate proposals in the same panel, but also with other joint doctorates proposals and other doctoral networks proposals in the same panel. It's different than H2020, in which you had dedicated panels for these industrial and joint doctorates. Now it's no longer the case. So how do doctoral networks stand in 2023? What are the new features? So what you need to know is that when you're going to set up your proposal, you will need to set a number of individual PhD research projects for a number of months. And basically, you can go up to 540 person month for all the implementation modes. So that means that if you recruit fellows for 36 months, that means that for the overall consortium, for the overall proposal, you will be able to recruit 15 fellows for 36 months. That makes up 540 person month. In terms of the overall duration of the project, it's maximum 48 months for standard doctoral networks and industrial doctorates, and maximum 60 months for joint doctorates. Why is it longer for joint doctorates? The reply is in the bullet point below. In terms of individual duration of the fellowships, so each PhD students or doctoral candidates, as we call them now, should be between 3 and 36 months for standard DN and DN industrial doctorates. So, I mean, in the vast majority, if not all the cases, you go for the full 36 months. And basically, that means that you have 1 year extra to run the overall project. So that means that basically you have up to 12 months to perform the recruitment of the fellows that will work in the project. Okay, but for joint doctorates, as an incentive, and it's new this year, you will be able to grant a fellowship of maximum 48 months for joint doctorates. So that means that in order to have you keep this 12 extra months in order to recruit the fellows, then for joint doctorates, you can go up to 60 months. All right. Just a word, because we had some questions about that. You don't need to have necessarily 48 months for all the fellows in your joint doctorates. You can have a mix of 36 and 48 months. It doesn't matter. What matters is that at the end, you cannot go above 540 person months for your overall proposal. In terms of secondments, I told you that it was possible to have a fellow recruited in an organization and seconded to another organization within the consortium. So this is possible, but there's a ceiling for that. For doctoral networks, the standard ones. So for those networks, you can second fellows for up to 1/3 of their time. So if it's for 36 months fellowship, then you can go up to 12 months of secondments. But there is no limitation for industrial and joint doctorates. So you can go above this 1/3 ceiling of secondment. And this is particularly important for industrial doctorates, because an additional eligibility for industrial doctorates is that the doctoral candidates spend at least 50% of their time in the non-academic sector. Okay, so they can, I mean, regardless of how they spend it. So they can be recruited in an academic organization and be seconded to a non-academic organization for 50% or more. So that's why there is no ceiling for the secondment in IDs. All right. They can be seconded to beneficiaries or associated partners. A little bit more on that later. And what you need to know is that compared to H2020, now the two sectors, so the organizations in the two different sectors can be in the same country. It doesn't have to be an intersectoral and international secondment. It can be in the same country. And there has to be a joint supervision of the fellow by the academic and the non-academic organizations that are involved in the fellows research project. For joint doctorates, the fellows should be enrolled in the joint or double or multiple degree, doctoral degree, which has to be delivered by entities located in at least 2 member states or associated countries. All right. There should be joint admission, selection, training, supervision, and governance. And at the proposal stage, the applicant should deliver a letter of pre-agreement to deliver these multiple degrees. And there's a template for that in the proposal template at the end. So I talked about academic, non-academic sector. What does it mean for us? So for us, the academic sector is public or private higher education establishment, public or private non-profit research organization, or international European research organization. This is a definition of academic sector. And the non-academic sector is a definition by exclusion, if you will. So it's any entities that does not belong to the academic sector is non-academic. So the reason why I'm insisting on that is that it has nothing to do with the fact of being public or private, right? Because you see that a private non-profit research organization is an academic sector organization for us, all right? So actually it's more about the non-profit character of the organization that matters for being academic or non-academic. All right. So in terms of eligibility, I told you it should be a consortium, but a consortium of what? Basically, the minimum conditions is that there's 3 independent legal entities, each established in a different EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country. And out of these 3, at least 1 should be from an EU member state, right? So associated countries, for instance, I mean, there is a full list that I will show you later, but that means that you could have Estonia, Israel, and Norway, for instance. That's fine because it's 1 member state and 2 associated countries. This is eligible. What you need to know is as well is that all the beneficiaries must recruit at least 1 doctoral candidate that they have to host at their premises and supervise. All right. So all of them should recruit a doctoral candidate. So there was a question I received about how many should there be in the consortium. Basically, because there is a ceiling of 540 person month, that means that at a certain point you cannot add more beneficiaries than the number you need to recruit all the fellows that you want. In order to ensure some geographical balance in the consortium, there should be no more than 40% of the overall budget of the EU contribution that's allocated to beneficiaries from the same country, right? Yeah, 40%. There are specific eligibility conditions for industrial and joint doctorates. So that's what I told you before. So the 50% stay in the non-academic sector for industrial doctorate. For joint doctorate, the fact that each fellow should be enrolled in a joint, double, or multiple degree in at least 2 entities from a member state or an associated country. A little bit more on that later. And there is also a resubmission restriction that was put in place already last year, which means that if you submitted a proposal in the previous call, in 2022 call, and you had a score below 80%, you cannot resubmit the same proposal in 2023, all right? You can resubmit it in 2024. So it's just for the previous year, the resubmission restriction. I told you about organizations. Which are these organizations? So it's basically any legal entity from anywhere in the world. So it's not restricted to member states or associated countries, as long as you abide to the minimum condition that I told you earlier of the 3 entities. But no, not all applicants are automatically eligible for funding. So any organization in the world can apply, but it will not all get funding. Of course, member states or associated countries will get funding, but it's about the others that there's a little twist. I will tell you that later. So it could be consortia of universities, research institutions, businesses, NGOs, other socioeconomic actors. So those are the beneficiaries. And then there are the associated partners, and there's no minimum or maximum number of associated partners. You can have them as many as necessary and as little as you need as well. So which are these associated partners? So we distinguish between beneficiaries. As the name would suggest, beneficiaries, they benefit directly from EU funds, and the associated partners. So the difference is that the beneficiaries, they sign the grant agreement. They have to recruit the researchers. So each beneficiary has to recruit at least 1 researcher, and they directly claim costs to us. The associated partners, on the other hand, it's kind of an add-on to the consortium, if you wish. They do not sign the grant agreement. They do not recruit the fellows. They cannot recruit the researchers, and they don't directly claim costs. So what's in it for them? Well, they can organize trainings for the fellows. They can also host seconded researchers, and they can participate in the supervisory board. Now, when I say that they cannot directly claim costs, it means that they can claim cost indirectly. Basically, the way that the funding is organized, and again, I said that a number of times, but more on that later. Basically, there's a bunch of money that has to go for the salary, for the payment of the fellow, and there's money that's there to run the project. And the money to run the project, basically, you can redistribute it the way you see fit within the consortium, and this is usually decided in the consortium agreement. And you could have an associated partners that host seconded researchers or that organize a number of training, and they can be paid through this common pot of funds to run the project. But this is basically an internal matter of the consortium, how you do that. They will never claim cost to us, but they can be paid for their effort in hosting fellows or organizing training within the project. Eligible countries. So I told you earlier that all the countries in the world could participate, but they cannot all get funding. So basically, EU countries, well, that's, I mean, of course, they can participate and they will get funding. And for non-EU countries, it depends. So basically, you have the Horizon Europe program guide, in which you have a full list of countries that can participate and get funding. All right. And to make a long story short, those are lower to middle income countries. So if a country is in that list, they can participate and be a beneficiary in your proposal and in the project, no problem. Now, higher income country, so these are countries not in the list. For instance, if a Japanese institution or a US institution wants to participate, they can do it, but they cannot get funding. All right. So that's the important distinction. So this is the list of associated countries. Please note that Switzerland is not an associated country, and the association agreement with Morocco and the United Kingdom is ongoing. Basically, for the moment, they're not associated. Discussions are ongoing, and I cannot really tell you more about that at this stage. But basically, I always advise you to go to the Horizon Europe program guide. I advise you also to not download it and then look for the version that you have on your drive. I would advise you to always go for the website, because then you are sure that you always have the latest version of the guide. So I told you about the eligibility conditions for the organizations. Now, how about the researchers that you will recruit later on? So these researchers, they must be doctoral candidates. So the rule is that they should not already have a doctoral degree at the date when they are recruited. Okay. They have to be recruited following an open, merit-based, and transparent recruitment. And this can be audited. Basically, that means that at the minimum, there should be a job advertisement that's put on EurAccess, on the EurAccess website. But that's only the minimum, and they should be advertised as largely as possible. And basically, you have to be able to show that the recruitment was open, merit-based, and transparent. That basically you did not recruit someone because you knew that person already, or because they were already a trainee in one of your labs. Or if you recruit that person, you have to be able to prove that he or she was better than the other ones. These fellows can be of any nationality, so it doesn't need to be member state or associated countries. They can come from anywhere in the world, but they have to be enrolled in a doctoral program, all of them. And for doctoral networks and doctoral networks industrial doctorates, they have to be enrolled in a doctoral program in at least one EU member state or associated country, and for joint doctorates in at least 2. And there's the last thing that's very important for MSCA is the mobility rule. That means that the fellows, they have to move around. So basically, they must not have resided or carried out their main activity in the country where they are recruited for more than 1 year in the last 3 years. Okay, so it's unlikely that you will recruit someone from your own country. They should not have been there for 12 months in the last 3 years. Okay. So that's what a consortium could look like for a doctoral network, a standard doctoral network. So as I said, you have the beneficiaries here, and you have the associated partners on the side who can host fellows, they can propose training. All the fellows should be enrolled in a PhD, and you have a mix of member state and associated countries in the consortium and in the associated partners. For industrial doctorates, that's the same thing. But all the fellows should spend at least 50% of their time in the non-academic sector. So that's what you see in the middle. These little factories represent the non-academic partners, and you can see that the fellows could spend their 50% either in a non-academic beneficiary or associated partner. It doesn't matter as long as they spend at least 50%. They could spend 100%. I mean, it's 50% is the minimum. And for the joint doctorates, basically, you can also have associated partners, of course, and basically all the fellows should be enrolled in a joint, double, or multiple degree in the different institutions. And what do we call exactly joint, double, multiple degrees? Basically, the distinction is that a joint degree is one single diploma issued by at least 2 academic institutions from 2 different countries and recognized officially. Whereas a double or a multiple degree is the same thing, but with 2 or more separate national diploma, right? And recognized officially. So this is a bit about the structuring effect that the joint doctorates could have on the doctoral training landscape in Europe, is that, you know, to evolve more and more into official recognition of the doctoral degrees in all the countries. And there should be a letter of pre-agreement to deliver these joint, double, or multiple degrees in the proposal. It's usually quite a hard thing to do. It involves a lot of administration and bureaucracy, so it's not as easy as it might seem, even if it doesn't seem that easy to begin with. And we ask a letter of pre-agreement to that in the proposal. This is basically, I mean, you will get the slide, so you don't need to scribble what's written in there, but that's basically a summary of all the eligibility and the conditions for the doctoral networks in the three different modes. So the standard, the industrial, and the joint doctorates. All right. So I will not talk about that because I think it's better if you just have a look at it quietly. But this is everything I told you already. Okay. Now, in terms of funding, that's fairly easy. And basically, we work on a unit-based approach, and 1 unit is 1 person month of each eligible researcher. So let's say you're a university and you recruit a fellow for 36 months. Then at the end of the project, you will be paid by us 36 times 1 unit, so 36 units. Okay, and it's reimbursed 100%. And you have different cost categories. So the researcher's cost and the institutional cost. And it looks like that. You basically have the contribution for the recruited researcher, and this part on the left, everything has to go to the fellow. So the living allowance, which is the salary basically, there is a little asterisk because there is a country correction coefficient that applies to the salary of the fellow, just because the cost of living is not the same in Sweden and in Portugal and in Estonia or the Netherlands. So there is a country coefficient there. There's a mobility allowance, and they all should receive this mobility allowance because they had to undergo mobility in order to be eligible. That's important because if the fellow is not eligible, then none of the costs are eligible. So if the fellow did not meet the eligibility criteria, then you will need to give back all the money that was given for this specific fellow. Family allowance, if applicable, and then you have the long-term leave allowance or the special needs allowance. This is for the future, if need be, for the fellow, in case he or she goes to long-term leave or has a special need. So it's something that is ad hoc. And then on the right side, you have the institutional unit contribution. So that's basically the money to run the project. So that's basically you have 2,800 euros per fellow per month to run the project. It's not necessarily to run their project, it's to run the overall project. Okay, so this was the part where I told you that you could put all of that in a pot and redistribute it to the different beneficiaries and to the associated partners, depending on what they do for the project. So it could be that there's a beneficiary that organizes a lot of trainings, and maybe this beneficiary needs a bit more of this institutional contribution because they just spend more in training. You could also take this money to pay an associated partner for the cost of hosting a fellow for secondments for a number of months. So this can be redistributed as long as you agree with it. And basically, what we will give you as funding is just the number of months of each fellow times the unit. Okay? So that's pretty easy. Now coming to its evaluation, how are your proposals evaluated? And basically, the main thing to understand is that each proposal is evaluated by at least, and in the doctoral networks, it's 3. So 3 independent experts. So your proposal will be evaluated by 3 experts. And these 3 experts at the beginning, they don't know who the other experts are. They just write their individual evaluation report independently of the others. They don't know who the others are or what they are writing. And then they submit this individual evaluation report. After they've done that, then they need to sit together in a consensus group for the 3 evaluators and what we call a rapporteur. So that's another expert that's going to draft the consensus report based on the input from the three experts. And the three experts, they have to agree on all the comments on all of the the written assessment and on the scores. And only when they agree does this become the consensus report, which is basically what you receive as an output of the evaluation. So of course, experts, they can change their mind because maybe a proposal has been seen by three experts who saw the proposal from a different angle based on their different backgrounds. So they discuss in the consensus and they can change their mind, adapt their mind, and they all need to agree at the end. If they cannot reach a consensus, we can appoint a fourth expert, a fifth expert, but in the end, they always reach a consensus. And the way it works in the process is that, of course, first we receive the proposal, we check that they are eligible and admissible. Every year, there's still a small number of proposals that are not eligible. Sometimes applicants that are PhD students that mistake this for an individual fellowship proposal. Then we allocate the proposals to the evaluators, and then comes the individual evaluation I told you about. So three experts, per proposal, then the consensus group. And then when all this is done, there is a panel review. The panel review at the very end of the evaluation is basically the experts coming together, and it's basically, if you wish, a gigantic leveling the playing field, benchmarking, consistency checking across all the evaluations, right? So basically checking all the consensus reports again and checking that all the proposals have been treated the same, right? And sometimes it's possible that one aspect was judged in a proposal quite harshly and was not that harshly evaluated in other proposals. So the panel, which is composed of external experts, can decide to change the score accordingly. And this is, of course, there's an audit trail on that. I mean, they justify their choice, and this you're right or wrong, basically. Okay, and at the end we have the proposal ranked by score, and then the final list. And then if you're in the main list, you're funded. And basically, you have the minimum threshold to be considered for funding is 70%. And basically, you take the highest ranked proposal. And when there is no money left, then we just stop funding proposals. So it doesn't mean that if you're above 70%, you will get funding. It means that if you're below 70%, even if there was enough budget, you could not get funding. But basically, usually it's higher than 90%, the threshold to be funded. This is in the funding and tender portal. I can show you later. On which criteria are the evaluations, are the proposals assessed? So we have three main criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. And within these criteria, we have sub-criteria. And basically, you will see in the proposal template that these sub-criteria basically follow the structure of the template. Okay, so the experts, they have to assess each criterion, so each sub-criterion, and basically, depending on the wording of the assessment of all sub-criteria coming together as a criterion, so excellence, then they will put a score. And that's the same for impact and implementation. There's the weighing for all these criteria. So excellence weighs more than impact, that weighs more than implementation, 50%, 30%, 20%. Okay, so all these criteria are scored out of 5. And with the weighting, basically this is transformed into a score out of 100. How can you apply? You have to go to the funding and tender portal or networks, So here is written 2021, but obviously you have to go to 2023. This call is closed, obviously. And you can find here a lot of useful documents. So the work program, the Horizon Europe annexes, the program guide where you can see the countries that are eligible, the guide for applicant, the proposal template, and basically you have two, actually three document. You have the part A, which is structured data. You fill that directly in the system where you have data about the participants, the budget, some questions about ethics and things like that. And you have the part B, that is the narrative part that you will basically, you need to follow the template and upload that as a PDF document in the system. And you have basically the part B1, where you have a page limit of 30 pages, and the part B2 in which there is no limit. But the proposal template explains exactly what's expected from each section of the proposal. Now, of course, when you prepare your proposals, but you will get more on that with the other presenters, but I really advise you to read carefully the work program, the guidance document, use the proposal template. Every year, the proposal template is a bit adapted based on the lessons learned from the previous evaluation. So in 2023, we have a new proposal template. It's already in the funding and tender portal. Use that one. Read carefully the evaluation form and don't underestimate any part of the proposal. This is a very competitive scheme, funding scheme, around 15% success rate, and all parts are important. So excellence is important, of course, but also impact and implementation. And only the proposals that are really excellent on all three criteria have a chance to make the cut. So write each section clearly and in coherence with all the sections in the proposal. Perform an internal peer review with your consortium partners. Consult your national contact points. And don't leave the submission to the last minute. Think like an evaluator. So read the evaluation criteria and think, if you were an evaluator, how would you assess your own proposal? So think like an evaluator, write for an evaluator. Okay. Resources, you will get the slides, so you can click on the link at your own pace. But there's a number of useful documents here, the work program, the MSCA website, links to your national contact points, contact details, things like that. I would like to finish with a general call. For you, if you want to work as an expert, I advise you to go to the funding and tender and register yourself if you haven't done so yet. As an evaluator, put up your CV in here. Obviously, we pay great attention to potential conflicts of interest. So if you are going to submit a proposal, or you know someone very well who's going to submit a proposal, we will not recruit you as an expert for the next call. But for the years where you don't submit a proposal and you don't have any conflict of interest with anyone submitting a proposal, then we can, it's probably an interesting experience. We'll see with the other presenters whether he agrees with that. It's probably a good experience to be an evaluator at least once for this scheme. And that's it. Thank you. I just wanted maybe to show you, if you don't mind, the funding and tender portal website. So if you go to the funding and tender opportunities, you Google it, you find it, and you type DN here, you search, and you will find the DN 2023. So that's the one that will open on the 30th of May. And basically, if you look at the topic conditions and documents, you will find here the standard application form. So use that. This is the latest template. Okay, whoop. You will see 18th of April 2023. So that's the one you should use. The guide for applicant is not there yet. The call is not open yet. It will come soon. It will be more or less, it will just reflect the new conditions for 2023. the 48-month for each fellows in joint doctorate and things like that. But you have all this information there. And lastly, just to say, if in the audience there are some people that would like to go in a PhD in one of these doctoral networks, so they should not submit a Doctoral Networks proposal, obviously, but they can go to the Euraccess website where all the find jobs, where all the PhD positions from all the doctoral networks should be published. So if you're interested in being a doctoral candidate in one of the programs, in one of the Doctoral Networks project, you can go to Euraccess and find it there. So thank you very much. I hope I was not too long, and I will stop sharing, and I'm happy to reply to any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Julian. It was all very clear, but Dr.